How's everybody doing? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish, and we've got something kind of fun today. It's the end of our birthday anniversary week, and I'm guessing there are a couple of you that have some Simi seal from Spawn in your packages as little samples. Some of you already purchased it. Thank you. But today we're going to jump into some acid rain and find out what it can do to your fly to make it irresistible to fish. So grab your vise, grab your tools, and let's get it on. Alright, in the vise today we have the Ahrex SA274. This is a size 6. And what we're going to tie today is something fun for all your salmonid. So you've got coho, chum, maybe you're going to have some chinook in your area. This fly will get it done. I'm looking specifically to tie something nasty that shows up in off-colored water, dirty water, all that good stuff, which is typical in the wintertime, especially in Southwest Washington. So let's just get at it here. Let's get some thread on this guy. Got some Veevus, and I lost the tag on this one, but it's either 100 denier or 140. I'm kind of thinking it's a 100. Either way, the Veevus thread is so strong, it's going to get the job done for you. Alright, so I'm going to give myself a mark here on this hook shank. And as you see, I'm not still on the flat portion, but I'm not way down on the curve. I'm about halfway down that first section of the curved shank, and then I'll come up back to mid position on the shank. First thing we're going to do is throw in a Polliwog tail from Spawn, and this is black. And as far as measuring and all that, one thing that I like to do is give myself these little marks on either my vise or on my scissors or my tying tools, and then I don't have to measure everything constantly to see if I'm being consistent. So when I'm tying these style flies that are going to have a tail coming off the back, whether it's a shank or a hook, I'm just going for the center of this little dot that is the top portion of my release handle on this vise. If I put that guy right there each and every time, my flies will all be consistent, and I've done this, how many times, so I already know that that's the length I'm going for, and easy peasy, I don't have to measure every time. So let's just get that guy tied in, and nothing crazy there. I'm going to come up, trim that tag end out, and I have already melted the end of that before I tie it in. So just finish tying down the tag portion of that Polliwog tail, and then come all the way back down to where we tied it in. I'm making a loop at this point with my thread, and I'm going to make the knot once, twice, 3 times around the thread, and then bring that knot right up to the shank, tie forward a few gapped wraps, and then tie back down. And at this point, pay attention to the knot and really solidify it so it can't move on you, and you're ready to put some material in there. And guess what we're going to use? We're going for some Spawn Simi Seal, the new Acid Rain. Lots of color, lots of depth to this stuff. In the water, it just drives fish silly. Alright, so here again, I'll show you another tip that I'm talking about with pre-measuring your materials with a utensil or the vise. So we got the tail measurement, but on my scissor, for a shank this size, I know that if I exclude the handles and just use the actual blade portion of the scissor, it's going to line up with exactly how much dubbing is in that loop. Again, once you know your hook sizes, shank sizes, and you've tied a bunch of these, no need to keep measuring. Just use your tools as a measuring device. Alright, so I've got the Schmain dubbing twister in here. I'm going to spin this guy up. So pretend this is fast forward. Maybe to take an extra sip of coffee right now, that'd be great. And just avoid getting that stuck on the hook point. It's about your only detriment that you have to watch for. Alright, once you've got that spun up, coming in here with the Swiss CDC brush, I'm just going to gently start getting those fibers untangled and untrapped from spinning them up. Brush down, brush up, brush sideways. It'll release everything. If you have too much dub, it'll get rid of the excess to some degree. So just make it look pretty. the fish will thank you. Alright, there we go. And as we start wrapping, all we're going to do is use our offhand index finger and thumb and constantly be mindful of the direction of our fibers. We want them all flowing toward the back to go over the tail, so that as this little streamer is coming through the water, it all makes sense and you don't have fibers going the wrong direction, confusing those poor fish. If you confuse them, they don't know if they should eat it or not, and then you just stuck there waving at them as they say goodbye. That's no bueno. Keep those fibers going toward the rear of your fly. And we're not going to get real crazy on this trailing hook here. This is as fancy as it's going to get. So take your time, make a nice loop, make it look as good as you can, and tie this off nice and snug. Get a few wraps of thread on there, and at this point I'm going to take my Schman dubbing twister out. I'm going to veil that thread back over itself from the loop and give a few wraps to really solidify that so nothing's coming undone on this. Again, we're fishing this to some rather beefy anadromous fish that they're going to do some damage to your fly. So tie it as strongly as possible. Now I'm back in with the brush. I'm really going to be aggressive now. Get those fibers sort of lifted, brush toward the front, and it's going to release a bunch of those trapped fibers, which are just about inevitable anytime you use a loop. And the simple solution, get in there, roughly brush that thing out. Alright, so here's another step I like. Yep, you could just go like that, call it good, but I actually have the little comb brush combo from Stormfo, and so I'm just gonna quickly comb all the fibers that I just aggressively brushed. And there, to me, that lays a little bit nicer. It doesn't have, you don't have to wonder which direction this is going. So these little annoying fibers right here, just pinch them all back. Again, reconfirm that thread head, and we're ready for a whip finish. So like always on these hardcore flies, 2 whip finishes, we'll hit it with some cement and we'll be ready to go to the next portion of this. And there you go, and you can already see, I hope it looks nice on camera, but it looks nice from where I'm sitting. That dubbing is just amazing. Again, there are a lot of ways you can go as far as adding color around the dub. You can tie this simply as a Simi style leech, whatever, it does flat out catch fish. Alright, get a nice even coat of head cement. This is Loon Hardhead Clear. And we are well coated there. I'm just going to take that out and set it off to the side for a minute, let that cement dry, and let's start the next portion of this fly. So we've got the Spawn articulated shank, 60-degree twitch shank here. And this is 20 millimeter. For the bead, I've got the Spawn football bead, 7.5 millimeter in the color fluorescent hot pink. And to keep that bead in place today, I'm going to start some .020 non-lead wire, and I like about 14 or 15 wraps. And I'll show you why here in a minute. So for now, I'm just going to scoot all those wraps out of the way, get my dedicated wire cutting scissor involved here, and boom, cut that front out. As always, I'm going to round that cut portion down and flatten it against the shank. And at this point, I'll position the bead so that the bulk is on the outside of the shank, and then I'm going to push that wire in. As you can see, if you look, it gets 1 to 1.5 wires that actually go in. If you go to .025, it won't go in, but it will block it, and so it'll still stop that bead from moving. You don't need the wire to go all the way in. So at this point, I check where that arm's going to come down and adjust. So it needed 1 less wrap than what I had on there. Simply adjust, roll her over, and flatten that down again. And now you won't cut your thread when you get it started on, like, well, not as easily. Still have to be mindful. Alright, so watch this. I'm going to sneak this under the arm. I've got my thread trapped. It's on there. The knot is there. Jam knot for those who are looking for the technical term. And all I have to do now is come up, grab the arm. If you want support, a little cheat in the front, but all you're going to do now is just bring it down and solidify. Boom, nothing to it. And then continue wrapping. So after I've got 2 passes of thread wraps on the arm itself, I'll start my angled wraps on the weighted wires, go the opposite direction. And again, 45 degree and 45 degree. Now I've got 2 passes on there, 1 final adjustment on that bead, and now I'm coming straight on. And I'm going to just pull all those X wraps in between each wrap of weighted wire. So now the weighted wire won't expand, it won't slip, it won't turn, and neither will all those thread wraps. They're just going to solidify everything down. There we go. Excuse me. I would advise not eating Simi seal. It gets stuck. Alright. So for those at home, I'm going into some braid at this point. And we do carry some Maxima braid here at Spawn. So if you don't have any, that would definitely work. Senyo's trailer wire would also be a great option. All I've done is take about a 10-inch piece and double it over on itself. So this is the closed end where it's doubled. I'm looking for that open end, and that's what we're going to tie onto the top of our shank. And I do mean exactly on top. Let me trim that end a little bit so they line up for me. And it'll be easier to keep track of when those fibers or strands are laying the way they're supposed to. You don't want this to twist at all, so take your time and be mindful. As far as strength or weight, this is 50-pound braid, very strong. It's a little stiff. It's not going to give you a lot of that exaggerated trailer movement. If you want that, drop down to a 30-pound. Still plenty strong, but it's going to be a little more flexible, give you a little more movement. Alright, so before we get that hook on there, I'm going to toss some more attraction in. And so what I've got are 2 beads. These are the 3D beads from Hareline. This is their medium, I believe, a regular size. And what I'm going to do, you see I've got a pink bead up here in the front, and I've got that tail which is black with the acid rain. Again, we're going for something for dirty water, off-colored water. So in my mind, I want to incorporate some things that are key for especially salmon and steelhead, that being pink and orange combo. So what I would like, I'm going to start on the back here with an orange feather. So I'm going to have pink, some feathers in here, 1 bright orange feather, and then we've got that tail. So to break that up, I'm going to slip in a pink and a black bead. And once you see how that looks, it'll make sense to you. So first I want to put the pink bead on, and this is actually the Fuchsia. So again, we're going to have pink, orange in the back to pink, and then we're going to slip this black bead on here just because I like the spacing of 2 beads, and I want to bring attention to this highlight, if you will, on that Fuchsia bead. Alright, so now I'm going to take our tail, and remember this is going to ride hook point up, and since we've got a 60-degree shank there, this is going to maintain hook point up for us. So drive that through the hook. So now this is the look. All we do at this point, without twisting our braid, is come back through the beads, and then we'll tie this all down. I'm going to bend that a little, make it easier on myself coming back through those beads, and there we are. And if it twists or kinks or anything, undo it. By all means, don't try to fix it. Just undo it. As far as spacing here, I'm looking for the equivalent. Had I thrown 3 beads in, it would have filled that up right there. That's the spacing I'm looking for. 1 gap that is equivalent to the size of one of those 3D beads. And now, keeping this braid directly on top of where we tied it in previous. And the reason we do this and make sure it stays on top as much as we can is to keep this hook trailing in line with our forward shank. It makes the fly move the way it's supposed to, and the fish respond in a much more positive manner. Nothing more frustrating than getting out there and half your fly wants to twist and all that. So tracking is something worth paying attention to. All right, so now I've cut where that braid was folded on itself, and I'm going to now come onto the side of our previous braid. So you have first stack, second stack right on top, and then the third move comes to the side. And all this does is prevent anything coming undone or shifting from their connection. Again, you're not going out there hoping to find a 2-pound fish. You're looking for the 20-pound fish. A strong fly comes in handy. Cut those tags, and then just simply cover everything up with thread. Make it as strong and pretty as you can. Looking pretty good. Alright, so now to make sense of this color scheme, let's flip this over for a second. So I have hot orange Marabou. This is just strung blood quill from Hareline. So a couple things here. I've taken the left side. If you're looking at the top of the feather, I've removed the left side fibers, and then I've trimmed out the tip for a tie-in spot. Let me show you what's going to happen. So I'm going to tie this in on roughly the bottom here of this shank, and it's just to keep that hook point out of my way as much as possible and protect my fingers. And there we go. One little fiber there. Alright, so in the spirit of space style flies and all that, there's a reason they don't tie a lot of feather and fiber, and it's to give all these different colors a chance to show and a lot of movement. So after removing the left portion of this feather here, I'm just going to get my fingertips a little bit wet and make this easier on myself. I'm going to take 3 wraps. So there's one full wrap coming up on the second one here. There's our second wrap, and you see it just releasing ever so nicely. And this is going to be our third wrap. So at this point, I'm going to pull the fibers I don't want to include out of the way, creating that V in our quill there. Let me bring the thread back down, and we're ready to tie that feather off. Oh, that one fiber, there we go. Got him. Ha-ha. That never works on camera, so something else is bound to go horribly wrong here. Alright, let's just trim this guy out. And I see that one fiber. Boom. There we go. Move this around a little. Make sure nothing's trapped on your fibers. And if they're not trapped, you're ready to just solidify that. As you can see, we're just coming back over that trimmed portion of quill. And there we are. Alright, so now it's a repeat of the tail. We're going to make a nice loop here. And we're going to fill it again with some Acid Rain Simi Seal from Spawn. And by all means, you can change out the colors in this. There are so many colors in the Acid Rain that you can match it up with a bunch of different combinations, and it's going to look and work fantastically. Alright, there's our second loop. Now for this one, it might not look like there's a lot of difference in the length of this shank, because there's not. But what there is a difference in is the girth of this, because we've added all these other materials, thicker gauge, all that good stuff combines for a much bigger diameter. And so, remember, we talked about measuring with the scissor before, and I eliminated the handle to accommodate the hook as far as how much dubbing do I need. Well, for this it takes more, so I include the handle when I make my stack of dubbing. Again, if you're looking for a number, I would say the back portion received about 2.5 inches of a dubbing ladder in my loop, whereas the front's going to be closer to 3 inches. I hope that makes sense for everybody. Oh, and don't drop your dubbing twister. Alright, get that guy in there. Spread my fibers out so they're nice and not too beefy, but spread out. And let's spin this sucker up. And again, it's July, but the time for the steelhead and all the salmon and all, I mean, it's so close. You can almost feel it. So now is the time to get your flies ready. Don't wait till the last minute, because then all the material you need to tie those flies are going to be tough to get to, all that good stuff. So here we are being proactive and looking forward to another very successful salmon season. And again, got the brush out. This is Swiss CDC brush. I'm not usually one for fancy new tools, but this thing is amazing. There we go. Looks good. Let's get her started again, just using our offhand index finger and thumb, coaxing those fibers back before each wrap. We're just going to work our way up the shank here. And with all of these Simi seals, like, yes, the color is great and all that, especially, you know, if you're a UV fan, we've got a lot of options that do have UV in it, but one thing to keep in mind is the movement of Simi seal. There's a reason this stuff's been around for a long time, and it just flat out works. And there you go. Tie that off. Some really good thread wraps here, and then I'm going to pop that twister out and veil the thread back over itself, tied down with a few more wraps. And that's going nowhere. I can safely now trim this out. One more time with the brush. Let me get that out of there, and let's get in and aggressively brush this out. Again, let those trapped fibers be released, and then the way Simi seal moves in the water, it holds its profile on the paws, and then on the strip it condenses slightly, gives you that alive, breathing kind of action. Alright, so let me come all the way back down. I just want to increase that space ever so slightly, because I'm going to add some more elements now. Alright, so pink in the front, we've got all this mess of acid rain, which has all the colors. And we hit that hot orange, and inside that hot orange, you give them a peekaboo of that fuchsia and black combo, and then you're going to have all this kicking motion from the black polliwog tail and more acid rain. I'm telling you, they just can't help themselves. Alright, so now, just in case they need a little more bling bling, we've got some Krystal flash, and this is black. And as far as the number of fibers, yes, I am picky on this for no other reason than it makes my OCD happy. So I've got 7 fibers. I'm going to cut them at an angle so that none of them are the same length. And then what I'm going to try to do is tie this in so that it just reaches past that black bead touch. That's the length of this flash. So I'm going to tie it in on my side. Really strong wraps there, solidified. I'm in front now. I'm going to pull those fibers back from that flash and get one thread wrap in front so that I can easily just roll it over and catch it again and tie it down into place. Like so. Bring in my scissor. I'll show you that black bead sits right there, so I'm going to cut my flash to end just slightly past the black bead at an angle. Boom. There we go. Check it. See if it lines up, adjust, done. Looks good. Just one more tie-in, and we're done with this thing. Alright, so for the coup de grace, if you will, I've got 2 more Marabou feathers. I've got fluorescent Cerise, strung Marabou, or strung blood quill Marabou from Hareline, and then I've got a black Marabou, and you can see both of these again. I've removed the fibers from the left-hand side of that feather on both of these. Trimmed the tips so that I have a nice clean tie-in, and I'm going to stack them. Does it matter which one goes on top or bottom? Not really. you're going to have an even number of fibers coming off as you wrap. However, I do like the black on top simply because if it were to end and I got some extra fibers trapped for whatever reason, they're going to give a nice contrast against that bead. The other reason I'm using black thread, so once again, just ifs, right? But if it were to end that way, my black thread together with those black fibers from the Marabou are just another way to highlight that bright, bright pink bead. All right, at this point I'm ready to tie these in, or wrap them rather, but I'm going to use my fingers and a little bit of water and just kind of tame some of these wild fibers before I start wrapping. And there we go. So we're going to do 2 wraps on this. So there's one full, and now we're coming up to the second one here, and you can see that's all it takes. I fill that space in pretty well. You could go an extra wrap, but you're going to kind of disguise or cover some of that body, and that's not what we're trying to do. We're highlighting that body, letting them see all those colors and the different flash in there. So don't overdo on your wraps here. Sparse is what we're going for. Just a hint of color, breaking up the pattern, and not looking like one solid chunk of anything. Looks like little stripes of everything. There we go. Let's just give that some. That technical term for that is. Hope you caught that. All right. So now let's see if we can't tie all this down without trapping that Marabou. There we go. And if it is in the way, fingers wet, tame that back, and you can continue. All right. Whip finish time. There's the first one. Keep it clean. Don't catch those Marabou fibers. So again, I'll show you wet fingertip and just come through. Grab those fibers. Now you cannot trap them. They're stuck to themselves. Easy fix. Save yourself some frustration. Keep a bowl of water next to your tying station. Trim this thread out. Boom. Alright. So let's see what this guy has to offer us here. As you can see, I've got some of these fibers matted down because I keep getting them wet, but that's okay. There is a deadly, deadly way to go chase some salmon or steelhead in the river. Lots of movement, lots of color, big flow. Oh, I love it. Alright, let's seal this guy off so you guys don't have to listen to me anymore and we can all go out and catch some fish. Once again, loon, hardhead clear, finished in this beautiful fly off. Cover it well, but be mindful of where you're putting that cement. Don't let it creep into those feathers. So use the bead as your guide and only put cement where you want cement. And I'll just tell you right now, you only want it on those thread wraps. And there we go, folks. Hope you enjoyed. I hope you dig out the sample bags of that dubbing and find some cool ways to put it on a hook. We're definitely going to show you some of what our favorite ways of putting it on a hook are, and this happens to be one of them. So, again, if you enjoyed this, please smash that like and subscribe button. We appreciate everything you guys do for us. We wouldn't be here without you, and we will see you guys on the water.